Hello, this is the second day of MED, and here with us we have Charlotta Sparre, who's the deputy director of the Stockholm International Peace Research Institute, SIPRI, as known as SIPRI. And given her long career as an ambassador in countries like Jordan and Egypt for the Swedish government, we thought that she could be the best to answer some of our questions on European and Mediterranean dialogues issues and how we can mend it together and make it more cohesive and cultural communications. So, shall we start?
With great pleasure.
The first question is something that regards cultural and mutual understanding. As the Mediterranean region is increasingly war-ravaged, we all know what's going on in the Middle East, both between Israel and Gaza and Lebanon expanding possibly to also other actors. There is a growing need, however, for tools that can bring people together. What should be done to promote a culture of mutual understanding in the Euro-Mediterranean region to avoid escalation or to settle for peace, hopefully, in the short term?
Thank you. No, I think that is a very important and very essential question at this point in time. I think there is a lot of disappointment, a lot of sadness, possibly on both sides of the Mediterranean. And the foundation for getting to a better dialogue is actually taking more time to actually sit down and properly listening to each other. Very often when we set up dialogue structures, it is more about a series of monologues, listening to one perspective rather than actually engaging and trying to understand where different people come from. What are their grievances? What are their hopes? What are our common grievances and our common hopes, and where is it that we differ? So I think, for example, storytelling is an important tool in that, in actually humanizing, and I think that that is the problem with immense conflicts like the ones we are seeing. We are taking in numbers of destruction, of death, of people who are living under extremely difficult circumstances, but at such a scale that it's very difficult to actually absorb and realize that this could be happening to me or to my family. So I think that humanization through storytelling, but also through all kinds of dialogues, political, economic, social, cultural, as well as, of course, all the dialogues that we will continue to engage in on other big future issues, be it the climate or be it energy issues or be it migration.
On this point, because we as civil society, there's so much we can do. Obviously, storytelling is a big part. We have seen with all the journalists during the conflict that tried to recount what was going on both sides to make us understand, as we're far away from it, to make us understand what was actually going on. So as civil society, we can focus in a certain sense on the part of storytelling, but is there something more that we can do to help or to push our government, drive our government to take a harder stance? Because we know the government tend to they have to balance different interests. So how can we bring such governments to have wider conversation? Because we had the Mediterranean dialogues. We try to have conversation with ministers from both sides of the Mediterranean, the European side and the Mediterranean side. But it's not that common to have a place where you can have talks that actually target on the issue. So what do you think that we can do as civil society to make this process of dialogue faster, to push it in a certain direction?
I think that one key element here is de-siloing or bridging between different silos, bringing people together from different walks of life and from coming in from different perspectives. So just like you do at this dialogue, bringing people in who come from the government, who come from civil society, who come from think tank and research institutions, and from a variety of countries and of different generations. I think that this whole idea of bringing people who come in with different perspectives, then I think that the formats one needs to also work on. And again, I think that with this conference, you have a good balance between the big plenary sessions that are more of a one-way communication or a small conversation with a couple of people on a panel, but you also have a number of roundtable discussions that are more interactive and more engaging. I think working at different levels, but bringing together and creating spaces for dialogue is in itself absolutely key. In this, I would maybe like to highlight one dimension that we often maybe forget about. I think we have become, all of us, much better in thinking in terms of bringing people together from both shores of the Mediterranean, if that is the area we work on, bringing men and women together, bringing people together from civil society and from governments. But I think we need to bring in also the private sector much more than maybe we are doing today. And above all, we need to also think in intergenerational terms. How do we also make sure that we bring in people coming from different generational perspectives, and not least when we talk about a region like the Middle East and North Africa, where 70% of the population are under 30, but very often are not part of these conversations and dialogue. So that is something I also think we all need to do to further enhance and better our work.
No, for sure. Younger generation need to be as included as possible, considering especially the quota that they take up of the population. You cannot think about the future without taking into consideration their voices as well. Another thing that I wanted to ask, because we often discuss very generally what the European Union should do, what certain countries should do. Do you think there is space in this effort to build up trust in a period in which trust between countries in general is not at its highest, especially with the Middle East war going on? It's difficult for, I think, some of those countries to trust what the European institutions are saying and vice versa. Do you think there is space for like medium power, like single countries to push for an effort to have like a dialogue platform that can take into account everything we have discussed before? Like, is there a way to have a common framework? And can it be pushed by smaller countries as well? Or do you think there needs to be the big power in the world to get into the game and actually have the will to push for such an agenda? That
a couple of reflections on this. One is that I think that we need to work more together on the European level of getting our act together. I think we have shown an incredible performance in terms of unity when it comes to Russia's aggression against Ukraine and our policy on Ukraine. I wish we could have seen more of that also when it comes to the Middle East and North Africa region. So I think there is a lot of homework we need to do and self-reflection on the European side of how we can become better in collaborating with each other and become more mutually supportive. Wait. The second thing I want to highlight is what I mentioned before, namely the absolutely essential element of actually listening to what is being said on the other sides. And having that ability, and I think that can often best be done in smaller settings. And of course, it's absolutely important and essential to also have big conferences. But I think that smaller meetings, smaller conferences, where we actually can try to better understand each other's grievances, each other's fears. Where do we come from, and how does it affect us and our relationship? A third element that I would like to highlight, if you allow, is that I think that Europe's greatest strength has been maybe two or three things. One has been our both adherence to and our strong stress on international law. That is something that has been important, and I think it is even more important at this point in time that we continue to do. Another element is maintaining dialogues and dialogues at all levels, again, and with more of an engagement. And the third element is that I think we should look much more at soft diplomacy as well, look at art and culture and how that can further enhance and improve our understanding of ourselves and of each other.
I will give you one final question. Hopefully, I don't take too much time. I wanted to know whether you have some things to recommend. Like we talked about how good Europe was with unity when the Russian crisis came out, and also the COVID crisis as well. We reacted in a way that unified us in a certain sense. Do you see a practice, like something that can be repeated when trying to find cohesion in the coming year? Is there a best practice that you would like to highlight for the coming commissions, and a path that they maybe should take, or things that they need to be aware of and careful about, other than what you said before about listening to all the voices and try to think about soft power in a certain way? But is there something that catches your attention that you can think of that should be highlighted, should be repeated in certain sense?
Again, I think that we need to look at Europe's common good and not only in a short-term perspective, not only for the period of one commission, but also what is it that future generations will need. We have had periods in European history when we have been really good in getting together, and there have been times when we have been less good. I think we should maybe look back and see what was it that we did and learn from that. But I would say that this is maybe particularly important at this point in time, that Europe, while maintaining its strong transatlantic collaboration, also look at what is it that we have in common and what is it that we need as Europe to look at from European security, economic, political, social perspective, and not least in relationship to our neighbors, be they our neighbors in the east or to the south.
Thank you, Charlotta Sparre, for having the time to have this chat with us. That was lovely and very interesting points of view that we hope that people at home can listen to, and also government can have the chance to listen to. So we thank our guests, and we'll see you again with a different interview in the coming days.
Thank you very much for having me here.